Hello and welcome, dear viewers. This is Cases and I'm your host, Farah Atoui. As President Barack Obama trudges closer to authorization for military action against the Syrian regime of President Bashar Assad, fears of increase in the number of Syrian refugees as a result of such action started to be seen. Neighboring countries are already worrying how they will be handling the unrest next door if the President of the United States decided to strike the already destroyed country in order to protect Washington's national security, as Obama described it. More than 2 million refugees have fled Syria into neighboring countries since the conflict began in March 2011. Will that number double or even triple if a strike is to take place? How will these displaced Syrian residents be dealt with? Have human rights organizations prepared plans to rescue the additional refugees? Are neighboring countries in excessive need of a political resolution before the crisis deepens exceptionally? What are the legal rights given to displaced Syrians once they step hosted countries? For more on this, I'm joined here by Dr. Labaki, Professor of Law at NDU. I will also shed the light on the condition of refugees by phone with the UNHCR representative and UNICEF during the episode. Hello and welcome to Cases, Mr. George.
Thank you.
Of course, before starting our conversation, we'll take a look at a report that would summarize today's topic and we will be right back.
Okay.
The G20 summit finalized its talks in Russia. International players have not yet agreed on a political solution in the Syrian crisis. On one hand, the United States, UK, and France prefer a military assault on Syria. On another hand, Russia seeks a diplomatic solution. As the world has divided over who allegedly committed the chemical attack on Ghouta Arif Dimashq last August 21st, a clear political split remains over the issue of Syrian refugees in neighboring countries. The year 2013 has been witnessing the exodus of huge numbers of refugees in light of the worsening internal crisis. So far, according to the United Nations High Commissioners for Refugees, around 2 million Syrian refugees are of concern in Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Turkey, and other countries in North Africa. Over 2 years of fighting, the UNICEF reports that more than 1 million Syrian children seek refuge in neighboring countries, and more than 3 million Syrian children settle down with dire situations inside the Syrian territories. Regarding the financial support, the UNHCR lacks 60% of its funding requirements to ensure the basic needs of Syrian refugees. The UNICEF faces shortages that reach 15% inside Syria and 44% in sub-region. On the environmental level, the UNHCR declared that the current protection environment remains unstable. Large numbers of refugees have expressed concern of their well-being, depleting food rations and savings. What would be the condition of refugees if a military intervention has been launched? What is the response of international NGOs to the current hectic situation? Moreover, how would the case of refugees be put on the top of the international agenda?
In the beginning, Dr. George, actually, President Obama made the choice to launch a military strike to Syria, of course, waiting until the Congress gives him the green light.
I'm not quite sure
that he will do it. Okay, but at the beginning, Doctor, here, how would you analyze the step that he made under the pretext that Bashar Assad used chemical weapons?
I think the whole situation is not coherent.
Yes.
And this is why President Obama will have difficulties going to a strike, because there is not clear-cut evidence. All what was shown are videos without dates. We don't know people, we don't know where they were shot.
Yes.
2, we don't know the numbers of victims. And 3, we don't know who did it exactly.
But he said that his own agents gave him adequate evidence that Bashar Assad is the one that committed these atrocities using chemical weapons.
Well, the argument was we have information,
yes,
but we cannot unveil it for national security reasons.
Yes.
Usually when you don't want to say the truth, 90% of the times you invoke national security.
Yes.
You have a law program. Imagine in a court we can say, look, we cannot tell you who did it, where we have the evidence, but we cannot tell it, but we are sure of what we are saying. You have to trust us. Courts work on evidence.
Okay.
No evidence, no case.
From a legal perspective, Doctor, once President Obama announced that he would like to launch a military strike on Syria, depending on his spies, on the secret agents that submitted adequate evidence according to what he said, how is that viewed from a legal perspective? Is that accepted legal-wise, of course?
It's contrary to international law because we are a member of the community of nations.
Yes.
And currently, we are all gathered in the United Nations. And the Charter of the United Nations calls for respect of sovereignty of states. That means there is no right of interference in the internal or domestic affairs of a state unless a decision is taken by the Security Council.
Okay.
The Security Council, under Chapter 7, can allow such military intervention or can allow a number of other measures like embargo. So any action outside the Security Council is illegal. So what we have to make clear, either we all play by the rules of the game or everyone does what he has in mind, and then it will be the fall and the end of that international system that was founded in after World War II. So this is a very grave situation.
Definitely. This is not the first time that the United States slams the results or even decisions of the Security Council and even slams the decision of the Congress. I mean, Obama is still moving because in his speech he highlighted, of course, we're still speaking in depth about the legal perspective of that. In his speech he said that, well, even if the Congress comes to a conclusion whether yes or no, we are moving forward with the war. Is that seen totally illegal and what are the judges here?
Yes, basically, the President of the United States has the right to undertake a military action for 60 days without the authorization of the Congress.
And he said that.
He said that,
yes.
But,
so that's legal to him.
But when he sought from the Congress, that means the Senate and the House of Representatives, an authorization, he sent a project of law.
Okay.
No, he is bound by the project of law. He has to wait for their authorization. So either he would have done it before under his power as executive president, because the president in America holds the executive power.
Yes.
But that once that he has referred the case to the legislature, he has to wait the result. And legally, in my opinion, there was some suggestions that he might win in the Senate. By the way, he needs 60 votes.
Okay.
But if he has 50, maybe he could justify it. He won't get the 60. Okay. He will have a lot of difficulties, or probably it will be impossible in the House of Representatives to pass his legislation. Some suggested that in between he could really hit and attack. In my opinion, this is also illegal because he referred a project of a bill to the legislative branch, and he is obligated to wait for the vote and the approval of the legislative branch. And I am sure he has done it for many reasons. I think he is hesitating. And you know, in this case, hesitation is good because blessed are people who build peace, not war.
Yes.
So,
okay, but Doctor, today from all this analysis that you're actually given, which is exactly what we wanted to hear about the legal perspective of the whole issuing here, I mean, who today have the authority to actually criticize Obama's path, Obama's speech, Obama's will to actually move forward with his task, as long as you're saying that it's completely unlawful? Who today got the authority in the United States to stand up and say that, well, the president is not following the law, he is not moving according to the law?
First of all, the legislature and mainly the Republicans and some Democrats will not let it go.
Okay, so they are willing
to they are willing
take it
to
the
fight.
Next step. Yes.
And based on the latest surveys I have seen, it will not pass.
Okay.
So the second opinion, and this is something positive, you know, international law also is influenced by world public opinion.
Yes.
And here, the US public opinion is against the war.
So that will play a pivotal role in the decision making?
All representatives, especially in the House, are receiving hundreds of mails calling not to attack
We even heard soldiers also even criticizing.
This is a second point.
Yes, please.
Now, many senators and representatives said out of 300-400 mails they got per day, only 1 or 2 favored intervention.
Okay.
So I think people of America have learned the lessons of Iraq.
Yes.
Before the political class and the political elite. Okay? Now, what was the second part of your observation? The military.
Yes.
Yes. As you know, the military are supposed to obey the orders. And finally, they will abide by the orders of the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the American Army, of the US Army. But there are 2 problems there and 2 difficulties. Internally, there is a debate within the army that really they don't want to do it. Because they have been training for the past 10 years to fight guerrilla wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and now they are asked to go for a conventional war.
Yes.
The second problem...
And sir, here, but is that the point that why Obama actually retreated and said that there are certain points that will be targeted inside Syria and we will not be seeing boots on the ground, meaning we will not be sending soldiers to Syria? Is due to that reason, due to this military pressure, if we can say, on the government, on the US government?
Yes.
As a result of that?
There is a package.
Okay.
But concerning the military, there are huge cuts in the budget. 500 billion over the coming 5 or 6 years. So there is less money and resources. So all of these, the pressure of the world public opinion, the resistance of the legislative branch,
which does not
the resistance or the debate within the army. Also, I think, and I said that since the beginning, Obama was elected to end 2 wars, and the legacy he wants to leave is a legacy of peace. He knows what happened with people like Tony Blair and George Bush. So he wants, on a personal level, on a psychological level, he is more eager to have a legacy where his main interest would be internal affairs in America.
Yes.
Social security, healthcare, immigration laws. He has sent a very important bill to the Senate, and also the reform of financial markets. Now, you might tell me, but he was eager to attack and he threatened.
Despite the fact that even Israelis...
You shouldn't underestimate the power of the lobbies. The Israeli lobbies,
that's what I wanted to say, exactly.
Types of lobbies.
But here, despite all these reasons that you actually have submitted, Doctor, we've got a very important aspect that can play a pivotal role in decision-making today. Israeli lobby and the immense pressure that is practiced on the US spokesperson, or even men, or even the Congress members here. So there is a pressure that even, that of course Obama would like to see within the White House. And it's not even sad about that, because both Netanyahu and Obama got the same strategy moving forward and hitting Syria.
You know, when the debate becomes that public and that spread, lobbies play usually on the elite, on legislative members, of members of commissions. You have 10, 20.
Minorities?
No, you have all the people who votes in America are the 100 members of the Senate and the 437 members of the House. You have 500, 600 people. It's easier to lobby these people than to lobby the American people. What I'm saying is that now the debate is open. So representatives who were eager to vote for a strike now are having second thoughts. They are up to re-election. They are pressured by their constituents, and the debate is more open. So this makes the power of the lobby, in my opinion, weaker than having to work on members of a small commission. Also, you have also the lobby of people who oppose the war, who is also growing in importance.
And they are actually holding the riots in front of the White House.
When you have clash of lobbies, they can paralyze each other or are forced to come to an entente or to an agreement. There is an important also factor, if you allow me.
Please.
President Obama is not up to renewal. So when someone is up to renewal, he is more eager
Careful.
to listen to the Israeli lobby very carefully.
Yes.
But again, now, as you know, according to the US Constitution, he cannot run again. He can serve twice. So this also
gives him the courage,
makes him
probably.
less vulnerable or less interested politically.
Okay, having announced over the weekend that he'll seek congressional approval for military strikes against the Assad regime, Obama administration is now trying to rally support among Americans also. He's even, with all the speech that he's giving, and even John Kerry is doing a great job when it comes to that. I mean, gaining and grabbing more and even signing petitions, people signing petition in order to encourage them to go to the war. Obama administration is now trying to rally support among Americans and their congressmen and senators. Will he get what he desired, in your opinion here? Of course, with the great analysis that you gave when it came to the low perspective, eventually you're optimistic here that no war would happen because the Congress will not give him the okay. But eventually he also have a right, according to the US Constitution, that he can go for a 60 days war, according to what you mentioned.
You can notice
without going back to the Congress.
Yes, you can notice that the tones of Obama and his Secretary of State are different.
Yes.
The Secretary of State is trying hard and is somehow, in my opinion, making it personal. And this is not very the right thing to do if you want to get through.
Yes.
Obama is more reserved. Of course, he is threatening. He said that he would go for it. But again, it was a way out for him to seek the authorization of the Congress.
Yes.
So, is he going to succeed? My personal assumption is, as times go, things will unfold, and more questions will raise. You know, in the war, you have the principle, hit and run.
Yes.
So the more you wait, the more you tend really to attack. Also, and we start seeing that signs of compromise are
waving, right?
Waving. And there is another thing that is different. The international community is not supportive.
Yes.
It's very important to notice that the British stood outside of it.
Which is a great and important ally to the US. And probably that would be seen by the Congress. They will be taking that in consideration because, of course, they're not in favor of going to a war alone without the support of Britain, definitely, and London. That is for sure and a very important point that the Congress would be looking at when voting, right?
Of course, even the European Union.
Yes, even the European Union.
McCain thought it was a victory for him, but what they said exactly, and again legally, they said, seems likely that the Syrian regime carried on the attack. Exactly. They did not say they carried out.
And that's not an adequate evidence to move on with the war.
Now
from
they
a legal
want to
perspective.
See if here also we have another legal problem.
Yes.
The problem, he said that that commission that went to Syria has to say if attacks took place or not.
The UN Commission.
We'll have to find out.
Okay, of course, we will be speaking more about the UN investigation.
But legally,
inside
here we have a lot of
Syria.
legal problems.
Exactly, a lot of obstacles. By the way, dear viewers, we will take a first break today's episode. Stay tuned.
Beyond the lines, beyond the surface. Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
Welcome back, dear viewers. According to UNHCR, by the end of 2013, it is estimated that half of the Syrian population will be in need of aid. This includes an anticipated 3.45 million refugees and 6.8 million Syrians inside the country, many of whom will be displaced from their homes. UNHCR also said around 2 million Syrians are hosted in neighboring countries, placing unprecedented strain on communities, infrastructures and services in host countries. UNICEF highlighted 40% of children in grades 1 to 9 are no longer getting any education, setting them back for the rest of their lives. Of course, these are devastating numbers Dr. George mentioned by very important and international human rights organizations around the world. And of course, before asking what would be the implications if, God forbid, a military strike is to happen in Syria, what's the price that the refugees would pay? We're speaking about the UN investigators inside Syria. And here to say their mandate, Doctor, was not to say who was behind these, the use of these chemical weapons, but if they were used or not. Again, from a legal perspective, how is that viewed?
Well, again, we have to wait their report.
Yes.
Then after the report, legally, we should have another inquiry to see really who did it. This will take more and more time.
But do they have a legal perspective to actually investigate on who was behind the attack? Because at one point, no official reason would come from a reliable source rather than the UN. I mean, of course, the Security Council, even if they want to build up their mind on whether to launch a military strike or not, they will base their decision on the UN investigations because that's the most reliable source. So therefore here, are they legally obliged to come up with the results and say who was behind it rather than saying if it was used or not?
I think then there is a need for another authorization and mandate. The Secretary General will have to give that mandate. Syria, the Soviet Union will welcome it, definitely, because they are the one who have a very important interest in finding the truth. Now, this is a point. Then later on, you can build on that. So you see, this will take more and more time because you need to prove your case in a court of law.
In your opinion, what was the mandate given from the beginning then here? Of course, a lot of journalists asked Ban Ki-moon during the conference, why wasn't these UN investigators given a longer period of time inside Syria? Maybe that would give them the chance to come back with reliable resources. That's a question that here I asked to you. In your opinion, Dr. George, why weren't they given enough space?
The US was pressuring, was threatening of attacking.
So politics here meddled
Of course, definitely. They were scheduled to stay at least 2 more days, and they left a Saturday. They were scheduled to leave at least a Monday, and their original mandate was to go to the north, I think, in Khan al-Asal, not in the suburbs of Damascus. So the mandate shifted from the north to south.
Yes. And how liable would their words be, for in your opinion now, and how much will it be taken in consideration by the Congress, by of course US President Barack Obama, and by Security Council? How effective will their words be, in your opinion?
I think they will be effective, provided the report,
because they are working according to charters in their investigations.
Right. I think this is very important. We can know a lot from the nature of the product used in such attack.
Yes.
And then this will help. But again, it won't be conclusive. See, I told you at the beginning, all that issue is not coherent.
Yes.
When the European Union says we want to wait for the results, I think
they are doubting it.
The British Secretary of State 2 days ago put it straightforward. He said there is something more than the chemical weapon attacks in Syria and in the Middle East. Now we move from law to politics. And you know very well, laws are the result of lobbying, of politics often. We are bound by them, but they are not neutral.
Yes.
They are they come from interest groups, and here definitely politics is playing a very important role.
Again, here we say, Doctor, to an extent, the failure of course, the U.S. government to achieve its goals inside Iraq when they said they would like to invade under the pretext that Saddam gains weapons of mass destruction, and then eventually all that turned out to be lies. Probably that is placing more question marks whether or not now we would find that Bashar Assad is the one that used chemical weapons. They do not want to fall in the same trap twice here, obviously.
Well, again,
because the previous failure gave the other allies a more critical view of this movement.
I think in the U.S. public administration, you have different and diverging ideas.
Yes.
The Secretary of State, McCain, is the one who is the most extremist. Obama is more hesitating, and the military is debating the issue and not really very much encouraged to go for it. For this reason, there is a clash between the different interests and the different views on the same policy. And it has been always the case in the U.S. Internal and international policies.
Okay. Joined now by Joelle, the Public Information Unit at UNHCR. Hello and welcome, Joelle, to Cases.
Good evening.
Good evening. Joelle, what's the latest records you've got about the number of refugees passing Lebanon, of course, taking in consideration that Lebanon is the largest country acquiring refugees?
Well, yes, exactly. Actually, only last week, UNHCR in the region announced the 2 millionth refugee from Syria.
Yes.
And a couple of days before that, we announced the 1 millionth child. And as you just mentioned, Lebanon today holds the largest share of the 2 million refugees that have fled Syria since the beginning of the crisis. Today we have over 730,000 refugees registered or awaiting registration with our office.
Joelle, previously you gave us an insight about the living conditions of these refugees. Today, after the number is obviously around to be doubling, and that's the speculation that the UNHCR said that at the end of this year they are speculating for the numbers to double. How would you describe, after this increase in number of refugees, how would you now describe their living condition as long as things have become overcrowded here?
Well, exactly. By the end of December 2013, we expect the registration of over 1 million refugees with our office.
Yes.
And the government of Lebanon, the Lebanese government, has today announced that that over 1.2 million Syrians are actually in the country.
1.2 million.
1.2 million, according to the government figures.
Yes.
So as you can see, the numbers are on the rise. Their needs are increasing on the ground, and we are continuing to operate with a limited budget, forcing us to make very difficult decisions with how the assistance is being distributed and where.
Okay, allow me here, Joelle, to ask, the 1.2 million, are these the number of people registered in the UNHCR? So are we speaking of more numbers of people who entered Lebanon and did not register in the UNHCR? Or these are the total number?
Yes, the 1,200,000 is the figure that the government gives as an estimate of how many Syrian nationals are on Lebanese soil. The 730,000 are the number of people who, of this 1.2 million, have approached us for registration. There is a number of people, of Syrians inside Lebanon, who do not wish to register. So
we're speaking about more than that number now?
So the 1.2 million includes the 730,000 that have registered with us.
Now, analysis say that between every 6 Lebanese, we've got 1 Syrian. Is that true? Is that a thing that, in your opinion, is seen nowadays?
Yes, this is the latest figure issued by UNHCR in the region. Yes, exactly.
Okay, going back to the living conditions of these people, the UNHCR, did it come up with more ideas and more plans in order to acquire this increasing number of refugees coming in?
Well, the plans are still there. The programs are there, and every 6 months we review these programs. We ask for more funding. Today, our appeal, our $1.7 billion appeal, is only 27% funded, and this is our major challenge. Today, we need not only to call for funds for the assistance of refugees, but for the assistance of the host community, these poor Lebanese families who have taken in the Syrian community for over 2 years. And so today, alongside calling the international community for more funds, we are reviewing our programs to better fit our budget and be able to help the ones most in need.
Okay, as long as Lebanon is the largest number, or is the largest country hosting refugees, therefore there isn't enough camps that they can stay in, and that's why most of these refugees are living among locals. Of course, you've got enough information about that, Joelle, because of course here we're also hearing locals coming up with excuses and even criticizing the existence of Syrians among them, because that is not giving them adequate number of jobs or is depriving them of certain opportunities. And have you detected, of course, in the UNHCR, some kind of dilemma between Lebanese locals and Syrian refugees? Of course, those who are living among the locals and are not living in the camps because it does not. There are no more space for them.
Exactly. Well, shelter is actually one of our biggest challenges, challenges we are facing right now.
Yes.
And when one cannot deny the strain that is being put on the Lebanese community, on the Lebanese government, on the Lebanese infrastructure, and the Lebanese people. Okay. At the beginning of the crisis, the majority of refugees were being hosted with Lebanese families.
Yes.
Over 70% of refugees are hosted, are renting accommodation, and only 19% are living with Lebanese families. 19% is not a small number, considering you have more than 120,000 Syrian people living with Lebanese families, and this is a big number. That these stories are untold. The international community needs to see that the Lebanese community has been very generous and has opened its doors for more than 2 years. But still, there is a strain on the economy, there is a strain on the infrastructure and on society in general. And this is why now more and more in our programs we are incorporating these Lebanese communities so that they can also benefit from it.
Of course, we were speaking about the economic difficulties, Joelle, but here a question goes to Dr. George. Of course, if you'd like to share with us the rights that these refugees have once they step into the hosted countries, because according to the United Nations conventions relating to the status of refugees, such as Article 31 of the CRSR, gives rights to refugees. So of course here there are certain obligations when it comes to the hosted countries.
If you allow me,
Please.
First of all, as a matter of principle, I know the mission of the UNHCR is to provide help and aid.
Okay.
But as analysts, I think I have to point out a number of facts that are of major concern to us.
Okay.
The latest survey of the UNHCR gives the following numbers. In Turkey, 463,000 Syrians. Iraq, 177,000. Jordan, 519,000. Egypt, 117,000.
Okay.
And Lebanon, 726,000. She mentioned 730, 4,000 difference.
Yes.
But the real number is 1.2 million. So out of every one Lebanese, 3 Lebanese, you have 1 Syrian.
So it's not 6
and if
Lebanese,
you add,
you've got
yes,
1
and
Syrian.
if you add the Palestinians, you end up with 1.7 million. This is the country that is receiving the highest number of refugees in the world.
Yes.
I went over the statistics of the past 10 years.
Okay.
The first country before Lebanon was Pakistan. Pakistan now is hosting 1.7 million refugees.
Okay.
But you know that Pakistan has a population of 130 million.
Yes, overpopulation.
Lebanon receiving 1.7 million refugees is like America receiving around 180 million refugees.
Okay.
So this has a very important impact on the socio-political situation of Lebanon, of Jordan, because as you know, demography in such countries plays a role in internal politics.
UNHCR.
So I want to take it from a point of view. I respect UNHCR, sorry to interrupt you, but as a Lebanese citizen, I think we are the country that is receiving the largest number. We are the smallest country, and as your host is saying, we are not receiving enough funds. So I think the situation is really very, very sensitive.
Okay, doctor, but at the same time, we do not have legal right to close the borders. That is a very important aspect here. What can be made to actually minimize the number of refugees coming in the most legal and acceptable way?
Look, we know the war. Many Lebanese were displaced.
Okay.
We mean well. This is a welcoming country during its history. But as one time one French president put it, we cannot welcome all the misery of the world.
Yes.
other countries also have to do their job. They have more space, they have more capabilities. They have also to share with us that burden.
Okay. Of course, Dr. Joelle, there is a lot of points I would like to actually tackle, especially after Dr. George highlighted some important points. I know that UNHCR, would you like to comment?
No, actually, everything that Dr. George has just mentioned, we say in our discourse alongside the government every time we are out in the media. And our High Commissioner, Mr. Antonio Guterres, actually, in his latest discourse over the 2 millionth refugee, over the announcement of the 2 million refugees, has called upon the international community to take refugees from the area, especially from Lebanon. Because
yes, that's very true. We actually heard that the UNHCR asked the international community to create a buffer zone or a no-fly zone inside Syria and to actually accommodate this increasing number of refugees, but no enough response was given from the international community, and that's why the neighboring countries are supposed to pay the price. The question here, Joelle, if, God forbid, a military strike is to happen in Syria, what will the UNHCR do here? Because, of course, that will have a tremendous effect on the humanitarian issue here, speaking about refugees, about displaced Syrians, because that number will not even double. Speculations are saying that it will triple.
Well, yes, exactly. Since the beginning of the crisis, we have had a contingency plan, an emergency plan that we have set with the government in case of mass influx. And so far, the numbers coming into Lebanon and leaving Lebanon at the border with the GSO are stable. But if what's being discussed in the media, if there was in fact a military strike on Syria, especially on Damascus, and Damascus is very close to Lebanon, we would expect the numbers to rise. Okay,
so how is UNHCR ready to tackle that or to accommodate that?
On a regional level, we have a stock of material, of food, of water, of mattresses, of tents available in case of mass influx, in case we see a big humanitarian crisis evolve. And on the local level, with the government, we have set a contingency plan of identifying a couple of sites that would only be activated in case of mass influx. And at the border, at the Masna border with Syria, we are currently setting up waiting centers alongside the government, so that if there is mass influx, the government would be better able to organize the matter of refugees in terms of, in case there was a humanitarian emergency.
Okay, Joelle, Public Information Unit at UNHCR, thank you for this contribution and cases. Dear viewers, a final break and we will be right back. Stay with us.
The crisis of capitalism, the European impasse, the energy shortages, the emerging power of Asia, the economic power of the Arab world, the economic debate, informative, revealing, and progressive. It discusses the economic event of the world.
Economic debate, where the numbers reveal the truth.
Dear viewers, welcome back. Dr. George, several times actually, the UNHCR and UNICEF raised their voices to the international community, asking for help, asking for funding, asking for people to give them the necessary equipment to help these refugees. According to them, they received some of the money or part of the funding that they wanted, but still things are still bad in their own opinion. They need more and they need a larger support from the international community. At one point here, hear, or on the other hand, we hear President Barack Obama speaking about a military strike for humanitarian need. I mean, here, how do you read these consequences between Obama launching a military strike for a humanitarian need and the international community refusing to actually give enough fund to these refugees? They are the ones paying the price here.
There are 2 points here. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, as you know, the US became the major world player.
Yes.
The concept of humanitarian armed intervention developed. It said that nations can interfere in other nations' affairs, even militarily, when minorities, groups are threatened.
Okay.
The concept is very appealing. This goes against the principle of sovereignty of state. Because also, from the other point of view, many dictators have carried on a lot of genocide massacres and remained unpunished because they were hiding behind the sovereignty of the state. So something was and is to be done.
Okay.
But what are the limitations of such armed intervention principle, or what is called as the right to protect?
Okay.
I mean civilians. This has to be worked out. It shouldn't be left to countries to act practically often according to their own interests,
Yes.
and not according really to the noble humanitarian conditions.
And that, of course, by itself is a breach, violation of
there is a
international
need
norms
to
when they
improve, to
translate it.
amend the UN Charter. Really, to put in writing in the charter by itself when this right to protect is really to be carried out, and who decides when, how, and what is the scope and the limits of such intervention.
Yes, but Doctor, even if these, of course, were kept, what you are saying, what's the point if they're not applicable, if not applicable by the United States, and they're not even applying them, they're even smashing them? And of course, with all the things that we highlighted, nothing is legal from your own perspective. So therefore, what's the point of actually adding to the mandate or even adding to the charter as long as they are not applying it?
No, I believe when you clarify and you put them in writing,
Okay.
At least you can say that this or that country is not applying them. And again here, I want to say that the word public opinion in Europe, in America, is really the one who is overseeing and who is calling and putting pressure on their political elite to apply such rules. So the public opinion got the lesson before decision makers, and this is a very important point.
Yes, of course.
So there is a need to have them in writing to clarify that concept, that concept of right to protect.
And unfortunately here, of course, speaking about national security and all these aspects, we've heard several times, of course, and we've seen in Iraq, the US not only violated international norms by, of course, going to Iraq, but also they used depleted uranium, which is an internationally banned weapon. Israelis also used that in 2006 war in Lebanon. But still, we've seen a weak international appeal to that, or even international criticism to the use of these internationally banned weapons. So even legal-wise, they're not us and they're not judges, as if they've got a green light that they can pass through in front of the International Community and Security Council. Why do we have that impression?
Well, again, the war of Iraq, the lesson, I think, was, as I said, was got by public opinion. And this is why today Obama is having difficulties in carrying out the war. In Britain, the parliament stopped the government from acting. So you see, what happened is really useful.
Yes.
Of course, we need more to implement international. This is why I repeat what I've said. It has to be clarified, the two concepts, the relationships between the right to protect and sovereignty. Then we'll put more restrictions on states willing to act unilaterally.
Okay. Joined by Juliette, Touma, to also know more about the conditions of these refugees and what they are even expecting from a military strike. Hello and welcome, Juliette. Touma to Cases, regional spokesperson of UNICEF. Hello and welcome to Cases.
Thank you.
Juliette, what's the latest analysis and the latest numbers of people going into Jordan, refugees passing the borders and going to Jordan? What's the latest news and the latest numbers that you can share with us tonight?
Well, I'm afraid the problem goes far beyond just Jordan. We are talking about 1 million child refugees who have crossed Syria's borders since the beginning of the crisis. In the past 2 weeks, we have been estimating that there's more than 2,500 children who have been crossing Syria's border every single day. Put that on top of more than 3 million children inside Syria who are in direct need of humanitarian assistance, and you will end up with a tragic picture of 4 million children, Syrian children, who need right now our assistance.
Juliette, of course, when speaking about a military strike to happen, one can not only remember what will happen to these refugees. In your opinion, the UNICEF, have they actually planned what will happen in the future and made plans B, let me say, in order to acquire this catastrophe if it's to happen?
We are continuing our response both inside Syria for children who have been internally displaced by the crisis, but also those who are caught in the line of fire where heavy conflict is taking place. We're also continuing our response to the 1 million Syrian child refugees throughout the region. We've also pre-positioned supplies, life-saving supplies, like water, bottled water, water tanks, hygiene kits, education material. All these supplies have been pre-positioned to help potential increase of child refugees crossing Syria's borders.
Juliette, UNICEF and UNHCR, to what extent do they have a legal right to file a document or even to send a document or a study that is made that proves the consequences and the tragedies that could happen and the price that these refugees would pay if US decides to launch a military strike on Syria? To what extent do you have the right today to do that study and analysis and obvious consequences that these people would actually pay and the refugees would pay? To what extent do you have the right to file it to send it to the US government or in order to take a look at it? Probably that will actually make them hesitate or even refuse to actually launch the strike.
Our concern at the moment is that Syrian children, those who are inside Syria and those who have crossed the borders, have the supplies and that they are protected from all forms of violence. This is our main priority at the moment. We have called and we continue to call on all parties of the conflict and those who have influence on them to ensure that children of Syria are protected.
Okay, of course, Juliette Touma, UNICEF Regional Spokesperson, thank you very much for joining us. In cases, Doctor, the same question goes to UNICEF and UNHCR. Do they have a legal right to actually file a study to the higher commissions and describe the tragedies that these people would pay if a military strike is to happen? Because, of course, a war is there, and look at the number of people coming into Lebanon and Jordan, and even Turkey. What will happen if a strike is to happen?
I want to clarify one thing. The UNHCR and all UN organizations are doing their job in assisting refugees.
Okay.
And they are to be thanked for that.
Yes.
But it's not under their mandate to check the influence or the impact of such big affluence of persons on hosting states.
They do not have the right?
No. They are interested.
Aren't they in a position to put pressure on the...
No, they want people to be welcomed, to be accepted, to be given access to education, to health care. And at the end of the day, if they cannot return to their country, they prefer to have them being assimilated and naturalized within the country. But I think countries have other concerns. The impact, the political impact on countries that are very vulnerable, as I said, demographically, like Lebanon and Jordan.
Of course, yes.
So this is why I think things have to be seen. We want to welcome, but we do not want to create a further problem.
And even, of course, in countries who even suffer economically speaking.
Right.
Dr. George Labaki, Professor of Law, from joining us, of course, here in the studio. Thank you very much for being with us. Dear viewers, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for watching.